Remember when they say family is the safest place in the world? That's a lie. The biggest lie I've ever heard. Because it was inside my own house, in my childhood bedroom with dolls on the shelf and drawings on the wall, that my brother did to me what even the devil wouldn't dare. And my father? Well, my father always thought the sun rose and set on that boy. Even today, at 73 years old, I can still hear that gruff voice saying, "Making things up again, girl?" Making things up. As if the belly that grew inside me at 14 was something I imagined. My name is Jessica Randall, but you can call me Miss Jessica. I was born in 1951 here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in a time when children had no voice, especially girls. Girls were supposed to stay quiet, obey, and be grateful. Today, sitting on the porch of my simple but honest little house on this hot July afternoon, I've decided to tell a story I've kept hidden for almost 6 decades. It's not a pretty story, mind you. It's the kind that makes your stomach turn, that makes you want to cover your ears, but it needs to be told. Because I know there are many girls out there going through the same hell I went through, thinking they're alone in the world. If you're listening to me now, tell me in the comments where you're from. I want to know if my story is reaching far, if there are people from all over America watching. And please, if you can, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, because each like, each comment gives me strength to keep talking about what many people prefer to sweep under the rug. I remember like it was yesterday the first time I realized something was very wrong in my family. I must have been about 7, playing house in the yard, when I heard my father shouting at my mother in the kitchen. It wasn't anything new, he was always shouting. But this time was different. "Martha, stop coddling that girl. Let her learn that in this house I'm in charge, me and Tony." Tony, my older brother, 5 years older than me to be exact. Dark-haired, tall from an early age, with those green eyes that came from who knows where, because everyone else in our family had brown eyes. The neighbors were always saying he was too handsome, that he'd break many hearts. Little did they know that the first heart he'd destroy would be mine. My father, John Randall, was one of those men born in the wrong time. He thought women were meant to serve, that men don't cry, that one male child was worth 10 females. He worked at the nuclear plant. I don't know exactly doing what, but he always came home smelling of whiskey and cigarettes. When he was in a good mood, he ignored my existence. When he was in a bad mood, it was better to disappear. As for my mother, Martha Randall, a name that couldn't be more appropriate, she was a saint. Tiny, hair always tied in a tight bun, hands calloused from taking in other people's laundry. She tried, poor thing. Tried to protect me the best she could, but against my father there wasn't much she could do. "Stay quiet, my child," she'd whisper when Daddy started yelling. "It'll pass. It'll pass." The house where we lived was one of those 3-room places. A living room that served as everything, a bedroom for my parents, and a small room in the back that was mine and Tony's. In the beginning, when I was very small, we got along well. He taught me to climb trees, to fish in the creek that ran behind our house, to whistle. But as I grew older, things changed. It started slowly. A wandering hand here, a strange look there. I didn't really understand. I was a child, you know. I thought it was normal for a brother to want to hug his sister in that tight way, to want to sleep in the same bed even though he had his own next to mine. My mother sometimes came into the room in the middle of the night and saw him in my bed. "Tony, go to your own bed, boy." But he always had an excuse. He was afraid of thunder. He was cold. He missed when he was little. My father? My father thought it was wonderful. Look how much they love each other. Now that's a united family. And he'd pat Tony on the back with pride. He was the perfect son after all. He played baseball like him, drank like him, cursed like him. They were 2 peas in a pod. Father and son, thick as thieves, partners in everything. I, on the other hand, was the burden. The girl who was born when they wanted another boy. The walking disappointment. My father didn't hide it from anyone. "This one was a miscalculation," he'd tell his friends, pointing at me. "But what can you do? God wanted it that way. The The first time I noticed something really weird was on an Easter Sunday. I was about 9, all dressed up in a yellow dress my mother had sewn. The whole family gathered, uncles, cousins, the house full. Everyone complimenting how pretty I looked, how I was growing into a young lady. Normal, right? Just family stuff. But Tony didn't like it. I saw it in his eyes. That sudden anger, that way of squeezing his soda cup until his knuckles turned white. When everyone went to the backyard for barbecue, he pulled me aside. "Think you're so pretty, huh? Trying to get attention?" I was confused. Attention from whom? I was just there, quiet in my corner, eating my piece of cake. But he continued, "You're mine, you hear? Mine. I don't want to see you giving anyone else the time of day." Mine? What did he mean, mine? Brothers don't own sisters. But that day, at that exact moment, something changed. The way he looked at me became different. Possessive. Dangerous. And I, even without really understanding what was happening, felt afraid. A cold fear that crept up my spine and made my stomach turn. I tried to talk to my mother. "Mom, Tony is being strange with me." She was washing dishes, hands full of suds, her always tired face. She stopped for a second, looked at me, and I saw it. I saw that she knew. I saw that she understood. But I also saw the fear in her eyes. The same fear I felt. "It's all in your head, honey. Your brother loves you. He just wants to protect you." And she went back to scrubbing the plates with too much force, as if she could also scrub away the truth that we both knew but couldn't speak of. That's when I understood something terrible. I was alone. My father on his side, my mother too afraid to do anything. And there I was, caught in the middle, a 9-year-old girl having to deal with a monster who slept in the room next door. Things got worse. He started coming into the bathroom when I was taking a shower. "Forgot my towel," he'd say. But he'd just stand there, watching. I'd shrink into the corner, try to cover myself with my hands. But he wouldn't leave. "What's the matter? I'm your brother. You don't have to be shy around me." I started bathing with my clothes on. Seriously. I'd go into the bathroom dressed, lock the door, and only take off my clothes inside the shower stall. Even then, he found a way. He'd break down the door, say he needed to use the bathroom urgently. My mother would complain about the broken latch. My father would say it was my carelessness. Nights were worse, much worse. He'd wait until everyone was asleep and come to my room. At first, he'd just sit on the edge of the bed, running his hand through my hair. "You're beautiful, you know that. The most beautiful in the family." I'd pretend to sleep, squeeze my eyes shut, pray for him to go away. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. When I turned 11, things completely spiraled out of control. It was on my birthday, actually. My mother had made a simple cake, cornbread with strawberry jam. Just the 4 of us sang "Happy Birthday," no friends, no party. My father gave me an old doll he found somewhere. "You're getting too old for this nonsense," he said. "But here you go." Tony gave me a necklace. A cheap plastic necklace, the kind they sell at dollar stores, but he made a big ceremony of it. For my beautiful little sister. And he hugged me in front of everyone. A hug that lasted too long, held too tight. I felt his hand sliding down my back, stopping where it shouldn't. I looked at my mother in desperation. She looked away. That night, he came to my room again. But this time it was different. This time he didn't just watch. "You're a young lady now," he whispered in my ear. "Time to learn some things." I was shaking so hard the bed moved. I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth. "Be quiet. If you scream, I'll tell Dad you've been fooling around with Mike from the grocery store. You know what he'll do to you." I knew. Of course I knew. I'd seen him beat my mother for much less. Once, she smiled at the gas delivery man and got beaten for a week. Imagine what he'd do to me if he thought I was offering myself to the neighborhood boys, as he used to say. So I stayed quiet. I bit the pillow and stayed quiet while my brother did things that even today I have trouble putting into words. It hurt. It hurt so much I thought I would die. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the pain in my soul. To know that this was happening, and nobody would help me. The next day, I could barely walk. My mother noticed, of course. "What's wrong, Jessica? Why are you limping?" I made up that I had fallen. She didn't ask anything else, but when Tony wasn't looking, she put some antiseptic on my wounds. Her hands trembled, silent tears streaming down her face, but she didn't say anything. She never did. From that night on, it became routine. 2, 3 times a week, sometimes more. He'd wait until everyone was asleep and come. I learned to detach myself. It's amazing how the mind can escape the body when it needs to. I'd imagine I was flying, that I was a free bird in the sky, that I was anywhere but there, in that bed, with that weight on top of me. My father continued to think Tony was the greatest. The two would go out to the bar together, come back drunk, singing. "This is my son," he'd shout for the whole neighborhood to hear. "A real man, not like that boring girl Jessica." I was visibly withering. I stopped eating properly, stopped talking. At school, the teachers would ask if everything was okay at home. I'd nod yes. What was I going to say? Who would believe me? Tony was everyone's favorite, handsome, polite, helpful. He helped old ladies with their groceries, played ball with the neighborhood kids. The perfect son. No one imagined the monster he was when the doors closed. There was a day I almost told everything. It was to Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor. She was different from the others. No husband, lived alone, worked outside the home. The other women talked about her behind her back, said she was a lesbian, that she wasn't respectable. But she was always kind to me. "Jessica, honey, you're not well," she said one day, finding me crying behind the church. "What's happening?" I opened my mouth to speak. The words were there, on the tip of my tongue. My brother, he does things. But then I remembered my father, what he was capable of doing, not just to me, but to my mother, to anyone who got involved. And I shut up. "It's nothing, Mrs. Johnson. I'm just sad because I fought with a friend." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't push. Years later, when everything had already happened, she sought me out. "I knew, Jessica. I knew, and I did nothing. Forgive me." I forgave her, of course. What could she have done? In those days, nobody talked about these things. It was a family secret, a forbidden subject, a shame carried in silence. When I turned 13, my body started to change. Breasts growing, hips widening, the period that came and scared me because no one had ever explained anything to me. My mother gave me some old rags and said, "Now you're a young lady. Be careful." Careful of what? I was already taking every precaution in the world, and it didn't help at all. Tony got even worse with the changes in my body. It was as if I had become an even more valuable trophy. The nightly visits increased. Sometimes he wouldn't even wait for everyone to sleep. He'd corner me in the bathroom, in the pantry, in any dark corner of the house. "You're getting hot," he'd say. "Soon the boys will start sniffing around. But you're mine, remember? Mine." I was an object, a thing, his private property, stamped and registered. And the worst part is that everyone seemed to agree with this. My father was always saying, "Tony's the one who'll choose who you marry. He knows the boys in town, knows who's decent. Marry." Little did he know that the only man who had touched me was his own son. The last straw came on a December afternoon. It was hellishly hot, the kind that leaves everyone irritable. My father had gone to work, my mother had gone to wash clothes at the river. I was alone at home, not alone. With him. "Come here, Jessica. Let's take advantage of being alone." I tried to run, but he was faster. He grabbed me by the hair, dragged me to the room. This time I fought. For the first time in all those years, I fought. I scratched, bit, kicked. But he was stronger. He always was stronger. "Think you're tough now, huh? I'll have to teach you a lesson." The lesson hurt more than all the other times combined. When it was over, I was bleeding. A lot. He looked at the blood on the sheet and shrugged. "Clean that up before Mom gets home." But I didn't clean it. I couldn't even get up. I lay there, in that red puddle, wishing to die, wanting to disappear, evaporate, cease to exist. That's how my mother found me. Her scream still echoes in my ears. A scream of horror, of pain, of guilt. She knew. Of course she knew. She always knew. My God, my child, my God. She hugged me, rocked me like when I was a baby. Forgive your mother. Forgive me. That day, something in her broke. Or maybe it got fixed. I don't know. I just know that she picked me up, took me to the bathroom, washed me carefully. Then she made a bundle with our clothes. We're leaving, she said. Where to, Mom? I don't know, but we have to get out of here. But we didn't leave. When we were at the door, bags in hand, my father arrived. Drunk, as always. He saw the scene, understood immediately. What nonsense is this? My mother tried to explain. She stuttered, cried, begged, showed the blood, the bruises. My father listened to everything in silence. Then he looked at Tony, who had appeared behind him. Is this true, son? Tony shrugged. Jessica's making things up, Dad. You know how women are. Must be jealous because I got a girlfriend. And my father believed him. Or pretended to believe. Or simply didn't care. He slapped my mother so hard she fell. Stop protecting this whore. Want to run away? Run. But the girl stays. Someone has to cook and clean in this house. My mother looked at me. I saw the exact moment she gave up. On me, on herself, on life. She dropped the bag on the floor and went to the bedroom. We never spoke about that day again. Life went on. The nighttime visits continued. My body continued to be invaded. My soul continued to die little by little. But something had changed. I was no longer that frightened girl who bit the pillow not to scream. Now I was a survivor. And survivors do whatever it takes to stay alive. Even if inside they've been dead for a long time. That's how it works in a house where the monster has the king's protection. Where the queen is too weak to protect the princess. Where screams are muffled and tears are invisible. That's how a girl learns that family can be synonymous with hell. And the worst was yet to come. The year 1965 started differently. I woke up on the first day of January feeling my stomach turning, but it wasn't a New Year's hangover. We didn't celebrate anything at home. It was nausea, the kind that comes from nowhere and makes you run to the bathroom. I thought it was something I ate. Little did I know that nausea would change the course of my life forever. January flew by. The nausea continued, especially in the morning. My mother noticed, of course. Mothers notice everything, even when they pretend not to see. You eating spoiled food, girl? I shook my head. Spoiled food we didn't have. We barely had good food, let alone spoiled. It was on a Tuesday in February that it hit me. My period was late. Very late. I didn't really pay much attention to these things. I was never regular anyway. But when I put together the lateness with the nausea, with the sore breasts, with that strange desire to eat pickles with peanut butter, my God. No, it couldn't be. But it was. I remember the desperation I felt, sitting on the bathroom floor, counting on my fingers how many months it had been since I'd had my period. December didn't come. January didn't either. February was halfway through, and nothing. 3 months. 3 months carrying that inside me. The panic was so great that I threw up right there. This time it wasn't pregnancy nausea. It was pure terror. 14 years old. I was 14 years old and pregnant by my own brother. How was I going to tell this? To whom? My mother already knew about the abuse and did nothing. My father would say it was my fault, that I seduced Tony, and him. What would he do when he found out? I decided to hide it. There was no other way out. I started wearing the baggiest clothes I could find. My father's shirts, my mother's loose dresses. I tied rags around my belly, tightened them so much it hurt. Anything to disguise the volume that was beginning to show. But a pregnant child's body can't be hidden for long. It was my mother who noticed first, of course. One morning in March, she came into the room while I was changing clothes. She saw the already prominent belly, the swollen breasts, the stretch marks beginning to appear. Her face lost all color. Jessica, my child, are you? I started to cry. It was the first time in months that I cried for real. Not that silent crying I had learned to do so as not to bother anyone. I sobbed so much I could barely breathe. "Mom, I didn't want this. I swear I didn't want to. He always—" She hugged me, hard, like she hadn't hugged in years. We cried together there, on the cold floor of the room, two women shattered by the same misfortune. "We have to tell your father," she said finally. The blood froze in my veins. "No, Mom. For God's sake, he'll kill me. At 5, it would be impossible." But the fear was greater than reason. "Let's wait a little longer. Just a little longer." She agreed. Poor thing. She was also terrified of my father. But she started taking care of me in secret. She saved extra food, brewed herbal teas that eased the nausea, rubbed oil on my stomach to prevent too many stretch marks. Tony continued coming to my room. It's surreal to say this, but he didn't notice anything. Men can be so oblivious when they want to be. He did what he did and left, not noticing that my body was changing, that I moaned not from pleasure. It was never pleasure, but from pain, because everything hurt more with the baby growing inside me. April came, and with it my desperation increased. The belly was already impossible to hide completely. I started wearing a shawl all the time, even in the scorching Tennessee heat. At school, I made up that I had a back problem. That's why I walked hunched over. The teachers believed it, or pretended to believe. But at home, it became increasingly difficult. It was on a night in May that everything fell apart. My father came home drunker than usual. He fought with my mother over the cold dinner, broke 2 plates, kicked the dog. Tony tried to calm him down, but not even the favorite son succeeded this time. "Where's that whore Jessica?" he bellowed. I was hiding in the room, praying for him to forget I existed. But that day, I wasn't lucky. He kicked down the door. He saw me huddled in a corner, trying to cover my belly with the shawl. He took 2 steps in my direction and stopped. His eyes went from my face to my stomach, back to my face, down again. "Take that rag off, Dad. Take that rag off." With trembling hands, I took off the shawl. I stood there, the 5-month belly clearly visible under the thin dress. The silence was worse than any shout. He turned red, purple, eyes bulging from their sockets. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low, dangerous. "Whose is it?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. "Whose is it?" How was I going to answer that? "I'm asking whose child this is." "John, calm down." My mother tried to intervene. He slapped her without even looking. "Shut up!" He turned his attention back to me. "Whore, I knew it. Always knew you were no good. Who was it? The grocery store boy? The butcher's helper? How many were there, you slut?" The words cut me deeper than a knife. Slut. Whore. At 14 years old, pregnant by my brother, and that's what my father saw in me. "Dad, it wasn't— I didn't— Don't call me Dad." He spat the words. "I'm not the father of a whore." That's when Tony came into the room. He saw the scene, understood immediately. But instead of fear or guilt, what I saw on his face was anger. "What's going on here?" "Your sister." My father pointed at me as if I were a disgusting animal. "The whore is pregnant." Tony looked at me. Our eyes met for a second. In that second, he knew I was going to speak. He saw it on my face, and he decided to act first. "I knew it," he said calmly. "I saw her with Mike from the gas station, several times. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't believe me." Mike, the gas station attendant, a 16-year-old boy who barely looked at me. But just the mention of the name was enough for my father to explode completely. "That son of a bitch, I'll kill him!" And he went out the door, staggering drunk, but determined. Tony went after him, not to stop him, but to make sure the story would stick. I was left alone with my mother. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and despair. "Why didn't you tell the truth?" "Would it have helped?" I replied, too tired to cry. "Do you think he would have believed it?" She didn't answer. We both knew the answer. What happened next was an even worse hell. My father went after Mike, made a huge scandal. The boy's family was terrified, swore he had never touched me. And it was true. But my father had already spread all over town that the gas station attendant had abused the innocence of his daughter. In 2 weeks, Mike's family moved away from town. They fled from the shame, the threats, the gossip. An innocent boy paid for my brother's crime. And me? I officially became the family's shame, the lost one, the one who had dishonored the Randall name. My father wouldn't even look at me anymore. My mother took care of me in secret, but always with that look of someone carrying a burden too heavy. Tony. He became the hero, the brother who tried to protect the family's honor, the one who tried to warn the father about the sister's inappropriate behavior. Disgusting. At night, he still came to my room sometimes. Less than before, because now I was damaged goods, as he said. But he came. And when he came, he'd whisper in my ear, "This baby is mine. Never forget that." June passed slowly. July was even worse. My belly grew, the baby moved, and I withered inside. I stopped going to school. My father forbade it. "I'm not going to be embarrassed by you anymore." I was locked up at home, a prisoner carrying another prison in my womb. The only outings were to church. My father insisted that I go, that everyone see my sin, my shame. The church ladies whispered, pointed, shook their heads in disapproval. I sat in the last pew, the shawl covering my now enormous belly, and prayed. Not for forgiveness. What forgiveness did I need? But for strength, for a way out, for a miracle. In August, 8 months pregnant, I could barely walk. Swollen feet, aching back, the baby weighing like lead. My mother delivered babies at home. She was a midwife in her spare time, when she wasn't washing clothes or getting beaten by my father. She prepared me for the signs, taught me how to breathe, how to bear the pain. "It's going to be hard," she said. "You're very young, very small, but we'll manage." As if she could share the pain of childbirth with me, as if she could carry with me the weight of giving birth to a child who was also my nephew. It was on a September dawn that the pains began. I woke up with a twinge in my back, then another in my belly, liquid running down my legs. My water had broken. I called my mother softly. She came running, assessed the situation. "It's today." The following hours were a blur of pain. I bit a cloth not to scream, not to wake the men of the house. My mother boiled water, prepared clean rags, whispered words of encouragement. "Strength, honey. Breathe. That's it. Like that. It's almost over." But it wasn't almost over. The baby was breech, wouldn't turn. My mother was sweating as much as I was, her skilled hands trying to maneuver him. "Holy Mary, help my daughter," she prayed between procedures. It was 16 hours of labor. 16 hours that seemed like 16 years. When the baby finally decided to be born, I no longer had the strength to push. "One more time, Jessica. Just one more." And it was in a last wave of pain that he was born. A boy. Small, but perfect. Dark hair, fair skin. His eyes, when he opened them, were green. Green like Tony's. My mother cut the cord, cleaned the baby, wrapped him in a swaddling cloth. When she placed him on my chest, I felt something I didn't expect. Love. Pure, devastating, unconditional. That little creature was not to blame for anything. He was innocent, pure, deserved all the protection in the world. "What are you going to call him?" my mother asked. Before I could answer, the door opened. My father came in, Tony behind him. They saw the baby, saw me exhausted and bleeding on the bed. "It's a boy," my father stated. A shadow of something, pride, passed over his face. It quickly disappeared. "Doesn't matter. A whore's son is always a whore's son." But Tony approached. He looked at the baby, saw the green eyes, the jaw already showing signs of being square like his. He smiled. "The kid's handsome," he said. And for a moment, a brief moment, I saw in his eyes something like remorse, guilt. No, it was possessiveness, twisted pride. That baby was living proof of his power over me. "He'll be called Charles," my father decided. "Charles. A proper man's name. Maybe he won't take after his mother. Charles." My son had a name now. Charles Randall. No father on the record, because officially, no one knew who it was. Mike had been gone for months, so they couldn't put his name. It was just mine. In the days that followed, the house was strange. My father pretended the baby didn't exist. My mother took care of us both as best she could. And Tony, he prowled. He'd watch the baby nurse, change diapers, sleep. Sometimes he tried to hold him, but I wouldn't let him. My whole body tensed when he came near. "He's my son too," he said once, softly, when we were alone. The milk was slow to come in. Charles cried with hunger. I cried with desperation. My mother made teas, massages, but it seemed my body refused to nourish that child who came from so much suffering. It was Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor, who saved the situation. She appeared with a can of formula, said it was left over from her grandchildren. A lie, of course. She had bought it. But she presented it in a way that my father couldn't refuse without seeming worse than he already was. "Accept it, John. It's for the child. He's not to blame for anything." And so Charles survived his first months. Formula donated by the neighbor, clothes that mysteriously appeared at the door, a blanket here, a pacifier there. The town knew, everyone knew, and some, few, tried to help as they could. But the situation at home only got worse. My father drank more, hit more. My mother visibly withered away. And Tony started making plans. "When the kid grows up, he'll be just like me," he'd say. "I'll teach him everything. He'll be my partner, my blood." The terror I felt hearing that was worse than all the violence I had suffered. My son. He wanted to turn my son into a monster like him. No. No way. I would die before letting that happen. And that's when I started planning our escape. Alone, at 15 years old, with a baby of a few months, no money, nowhere to go, but I had to try. For Charles, for the innocent child who deserved a chance to be different, to be better, to be free. The problem was how to escape from a prison where your jailers sleep in the next room, how to protect a child when you yourself are still a child, how to find salvation when the whole world has turned its back on you. The answer would come in the most unexpected way possible, and it would change our lives forever. But I'll tell you that later. The plan to run away kept hammering in my head day and night. Charles was already 3 months old, drinking well from the bottle, sleeping almost the whole night. But how was a 15-year-old girl, without a penny to her name, going to manage to run away with a baby? Where to go? With what money? It was December when I gathered the courage for my first attempt. My father had gone to work. Tony had gone to play basketball. My mother was in the backyard hanging clothes. I took Charles, wrapped him in a blanket, put in a grocery bag his few clothes and a can of formula. I didn't even have a suitcase. I was going to leave like a homeless person. I reached the gate. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would explode. 1 step on the sidewalk. 2. 3. That's when I heard my father's voice. "Where do you think you're going?" He hadn't gone to work. He was hiding, waiting, as if he knew I would try. I turned slowly. Charles pressed against my chest. I was taking the baby for some fresh air." The slap came before I finished the sentence. I fell sitting on the sidewalk, protecting Charles with my body. He started to scream, frightened. "Lying whore! Thought you were going to run away with the bastard?" He dragged me back to the house by my hair, locked the door, took the key. From that day on, I became an official prisoner. I couldn't even go to the backyard without supervision. January 1966 came hot and suffocating. Charles was growing, looking more like Tony each day, the same green eyes, the same square jaw. He was my blessing and my curse. I loved that child more than my own life, but each familiar trait was a reminder of the horror I had lived through. Tony began to take more interest in the boy. He wanted to hold him, make faces, play. I was disgusted, but couldn't always prevent it. My father supported it. Let the uncle take care of his nephew. It's good to have a male figure around. Male figure. If he only knew what kind of figure that was. One afternoon, I overheard Tony talking with a friend. "When the kid grows up, he'll be my buddy. I'll teach him everything I know. Women, booze, fun. He'll be a real man, not a sissy raised by a woman. I froze. He wasn't just talking about teaching Charles to play ball or fish. He was talking about turning my son into another predator, another monster. No, never. I would rather die, would rather kill, than let that happen. It was on a February night that I tried again. This time I was smarter. I waited for everyone to fall into a deep sleep. I took the kitchen knife, forced the window of the room slowly, without making noise. I passed Charles through first, then squeezed myself through the opening. I was almost reaching the street when the neighbor's dog started barking. It woke up the whole neighborhood. Lights turning on, people looking. My father appeared at the door, in his underwear and slippers, furious. "Get her!" I ran. With Charles in my arms, barefoot, I ran like never before. But where to? I didn't know anyone, had no family besides that one. All the dark streets looked the same. The baby was crying. I was crying, desperation taking over. I ended up hiding behind the church. I crouched there, praying for dawn, for a solution, for a miracle. But no miracle came. My father came, with Tony and 2 friends. They found me easily. Small towns don't have many places to hide. The beating I took that time almost killed me. I was beaten until I passed out. I woke up 2 days later, all bruised, barely able to open my eyes. They were so swollen. "Next time I'll kill you," my father promised. "And the bastard with you." I didn't doubt it. The hatred in his eyes was real, palpable. If I tried to run away again, I'd wake up in a coffin. If I woke up at all. March passed, April too. I lived like a ghost in that house. I took care of Charles, did the household chores, got beaten when I stepped out of line. Tony continued visiting me at night when he felt like it. Less than before, now I was used, damaged, but he still came. "You're still mine," he'd say. "No matter how many children you have," children, plural. The terror of getting pregnant again consumed me. But what could I do? Locking the door didn't help. He'd break it down. Screaming didn't work. I'd get beaten more. Defending myself was impossible. He was stronger. It was in May that I met Rosie, a girl my age who started attending church. She had come from New York with her family. Her father was a transferred banker, different from everyone in town. She wore pants, cursed, smoked in secret. At first she scared me, then she fascinated me. She was everything I wanted to be, free, brave, self-possessed. We started talking after Mass. She didn't judge me, didn't whisper behind my back like the others. "How old is your son?" she asked one day. 8 months. "And the father?" "There is no father." She looked at me in that way that only another woman understands. There's always a father. The question is whether it's worth talking about him. I didn't talk, but I think she understood anyway. She started showing up at my house with flimsy excuses, borrowing a book, asking for a recipe. My father didn't like her. "That one's not a decent girl." But my mother defended the visits. "It was good to have company," she said. What no one knew was that Rosie was helping me plan. She had contacts in New York, new safe houses, places for women like me. Places that accepted single mothers, where they didn't ask questions. "But you need money for the ticket," she explained. "And something to sustain yourself until you find a job. Money. Always the damn money." Where was a girl locked up at home going to get money? The answer came from where I least expected. June arrived with the town's 4th of July preparations. Fireworks, parade, barbecue. My father decided that the family would participate. Appearances, always appearances. He forced me to wear a gingham dress, put a ribbon in my hair. Charles was in my arms with a little patriotic outfit. At the celebration, while my father drank with his friends and Tony danced with the girls, I managed to get a moment alone. I sat on a bench away from everyone, rocking Charles, who was restless with the noise. That's when she approached. The mayor's wife, Mrs. Laura Wilson. Rich, elegant, childless. Everyone knew she suffered from not being able to have babies. "May I hold him for a bit?" she asked, looking at Charles with that face of someone dying of longing. I let her. She took him with such care, such tenderness. Charles, who was shy with strangers, calmed down right away. He even smiled. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "So beautiful." We stayed there in silence, her rocking my son, me thinking about life. Suddenly she spoke. "It must be hard, so young, alone." "It is," I agreed. I had no strength to pretend. "If you need help, anything." I looked in her eyes. I saw kindness there. True kindness, not the fake charity of the church ladies. "Are you serious?" "I am. Very serious." And that's how it started. Mrs. Wilson began to help me in secret. She'd send care packages, clothes for Charles, sometimes money. Always discreet, always through third parties. My father thought it was charity from the church. With the money she gave, I started saving for my escape fund. I hid the bills in the lining of the mattress, among the diapers, in any corner I thought was safe. Penny by penny, bill by bill. July flew by. Charles was already crawling, babbling his first words. "Mama" was the first. I cried so much when he said it. It was proof that despite everything, I was a mother. A real mother, not just the girl who gave birth. August brought another frustrated attempt. This time, I didn't even get to leave the house. Tony caught me packing the bag at night. "Going on a trip, sis?" he asked with that cynical smile. Charles has a fever. I was going to take him to the clinic." "Liar." He approached, cornered me against the wall. "You know what happens to liars?" His hand on my neck, squeezing. Not hard enough to kill, just to remind me that he could. "If you try to run away again, it won't be Dad who kills you. It'll be me. And the bastard? Well, we can always make another one, right?" The threat to Charles was what broke me. I could endure anything, but not losing my son. I put away the bag, dismantled the plan, for now. September came, and with it Charles's first birthday. I made a simple cake with what flour I had. We sang Happy Birthday softly. My father didn't like fussing. The boy clapped his hands, smeared his face with frosting. For a moment, a brief moment, we were just a mother and son celebrating life. But reality returned quickly. That night, Tony drank too much. He came into my room staggering, reeking of whiskey. "It's been a year today," he said, looking at Charles sleeping in the makeshift crib. "A year since my son was born." "He's not your son." He laughed, an ugly laugh without humor. "No? Look at him closely, the eyes, the jaw. He's the spitting image of me." "Get out of my room." "Your room." More laughter. "Nothing here is yours, not the room, not the son. You're mine. Forgot?" He grabbed me. I tried to fight, but he was strong, was drunk, violent. Charles woke up with the commotion, started crying. "Shut him up," Tony growled. I broke free, ran to the crib. I rocked Charles, desperate to calm him. Behind me I felt Tony approaching. "Good to see you two together, mother and son, my family, his family." Bile rose in my throat. I held Charles tighter, as if I could protect him with my body. "One day," Tony continued, voice slurred with alcohol, "one day I'll tell him. I'll tell him who his real father is, and then the three of us will be a real family." That was the last straw. There, at that moment, with my son in my arms and that monster at my back, I made a decision. I was going to run away, even if it cost my life. But I was going to get Charles out of there, was going to save him from that hell. What I didn't know was that the opportunity was closer than I imagined, and it would come in the most tragic way possible. October started differently. My father was strange, quieter, drinking less. At first I thought it was just in my head, but my mother noticed too. "John's acting odd," she commented one day, washing dishes. "He's tired, no appetite." It was true. The man who had always been a bull, strong and brutish, seemed to be withering. Yellowish skin, sunken eyes. But nobody said anything. In our house, showing concern was a sign of weakness. It was on an October morning that everything changed. I woke up to screams coming from my parents' room. I ran there with Charles in my arms. My father was lying on the floor, convulsing. Foam coming from his mouth, his whole body rigid. My mother kneeling beside him, trying to hold him. "Call for help!" she shouted. Tony appeared, frightened. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in his eyes. He ran to call the pharmacist. He was the closest thing to a doctor we had back then. But it didn't help. By the time Mr. Thompson arrived with his medicine bag, my father had stopped foaming, stopped moving, stopped breathing. Heart attack. The pharmacist diagnosed. Massive. Nothing could be done. Dead. My father was dead. The man who terrorized me my whole life, who allowed all the abuse, who called me whore and slut, dead there on the bedroom floor in pajamas and slippers. I should feel something. Sadness, relief, anything. But I only felt emptiness. A huge emptiness, as if a weight I had been carrying for years had suddenly disappeared, and I didn't know how to walk without it. The wake was that same afternoon. In a small, hot town, you can't wait. The house filled with people. Relatives I'd never seen, friends from the bar, colleagues from the plant, all lamenting, all pretending that John Randall had been a good man. He was strict but fair, they'd say. He took care of his family, an honest worker. Lies. But lies that everyone preferred to believe. Tony became the man of the house overnight. He received the condolences, organized the funeral, made the decisions. I saw in his face the pride of assuming his father's post. The new boss. The new owner. It was at the cemetery, watching the coffin being lowered, that it hit me. My father's death meant one thing. A chance. Maybe the only one I would have. The man who imprisoned me, who watched me, who threatened to kill me if I ran away, no longer existed. I looked at Tony on the other side of the grave. He was holding my mother, playing the role of the devoted son. But his eyes met mine, and in the midst of the mourning, the whole theater, he smiled. A small, discreet smile. Just for me. The smile said it all. Now I'm in charge. Now you're even more mine. But he didn't know. Didn't know that at that exact moment, watching the dirt fall on my father's coffin, I was planning my freedom. Our freedom, mine and Charles's. My father's death wasn't a tragedy. It was a miracle. The miracle I had prayed for so long. The first days after the funeral were a mess. People coming and going from the house, bringing food, giving condolences. My mother walked through the house like a lost soul, not knowing what to do without her husband to order her around. Tony was strutting around, playing the head of the family, receiving the inheritance paperwork, signing documents. But I wasn't wasting time. While they dealt with the bureaucracy of death, I was planning life. Rosie showed up on the third day, with her way of not caring about conventions. So? Going to take the chance? I looked at Charles playing on the floor. 14 months already, walking on those wobbly little legs, saying random words. My beautiful, smart boy, who deserved better than that cursed house. I am, but I need to be smart. When? Soon. Before he takes over everything for good. The plan was simple. Wait for the will to be read, take my share, because I was entitled to something, being a daughter, and disappear. Rosie had already talked to a cousin in New York who rented rooms to young women. It wasn't ideal, but it was a start. The problem began when the lawyer read the will. Yes, my father had a will. And guess what? He left everything to his male child. Everything. The house, the land, the savings, for me and my mother, just the right to live there as long as Tony allowed. But that's not fair. My mother finally found the courage to complain. The lawyer shrugged. The law allows it. Your husband could dispose of his assets as he wished. I saw the triumphant smile on Tony's face. Now it was official. He was the owner of everything, of everyone, of me. That night, lying in bed with Charles sleeping beside me, desperation hit hard. Without money, how was I going to run away? The bus ticket to New York was expensive. I needed food for the journey, formula for Charles, a place to stay once I got there. That's when I remembered. Mrs. Wilson. the mayor's wife. She had said she would help if needed. Was the offer still valid? The next day, I made up that I needed to go to the pharmacy to buy medicine for Charles. It was a lie, but my mother let me go. I clapped at the gate, my heart in my mouth. What if she didn't want to receive me? What if she had regretted the offer? But she came. Beautiful as always, silk dress, gentle smile. Jessica, what a surprise. I heard about your father. My condolences. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I need to talk to you. She saw the desperation in my face. Come in, dear. Let's talk. In the luxurious living room, with Charles in my lap looking in wonder at the crystal decorations, I told her everything. Not the sordid details. I still didn't have the courage for that, but the essentials. That I needed to leave that house, that I had nowhere to go, that I feared for my son's future. She listened in silence. When I finished, she sighed deeply. I suspected as much. Small town, one always suspects. But I never had proof, never knew how to help. Now you can. Please, I just need money for a ticket, to start over. She became thoughtful. After a time that seemed eternal, she spoke. I can do better than that. I have a friend in Washington, D.C., owner of a family boarding house. She needs help in the kitchen, offers room and board. It's not much, but it's honest work and a safe place. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Far enough from Oak Ridge to never cross paths with Tony again. My heart raced with hope. I accept anything. I'll call her today. And the ticket? Consider it a gift. I almost cried with gratitude. But Mrs. Wilson wasn't finished. There's one condition, Jessica. You leave and don't come back. Don't write, don't send news. Cut off all contact. It's for your safety and for mine. My husband can't know I helped. Do you understand? I understood. Of course I understood. The mayor wouldn't like to know his wife helped the fallen girl of the town to escape. It could stain the family's reputation. I promise, no one will ever know. I left there with a light heart for the first time in years. I had a plan. I had help. I had hope. I just needed to act quickly before Tony noticed anything. The following days were of careful preparation. I separated the essentials, clothes for Charles, documents, the little money I had hidden. Everything fit in one travel bag. Entire life in one bag. Rosie helped as she could. She found out the bus schedules, the best route, where to make stops. She taught me how to use the phone booth, how to ask for information, basic things I had never needed to know. It's different in big cities, she explained. You have to be smart, not trust just anyone. The set date arrived, November 3rd, 1966. The bus left at 4 in the morning. Mrs. Wilson sent the ticket money with Rosie, along with a letter of recommendation for her friend in Washington. The night before, I barely slept. I kept looking at Charles, memorizing every detail. The light brown hair, the upturned nose, the chubby little hands. My son, my treasure, who was going to know the world beyond those four walls. At 3 in the morning, I got up slowly. I dressed Charles while he was still sleeping, grabbed the bag, made the sign of the cross. The house was silent. My mother snoring softly in her room. Tony had gone out. It was Friday, his night at the town's brothel. I walked through the living room on tiptoe. Each creak of the floorboards seemed like thunder. Charles moved in my arms, mumbled. I shushed him softly, rocking him. I was almost at the door when I heard, "Really leaving?" I froze. I turned slowly. My mother was there, standing at the kitchen door. Old nightgown, disheveled hair, eyes red from crying. "Mom." I know. I've always known. Everything. Her voice was a broken whisper. But I never had the courage. "Your father, I was afraid. Why didn't you protect me?" The question came out before I could hold it back. Years of hurt in one sentence. She lowered her head. "Because I'm weak. Always have been. But you're not. You're strong, Jessica. Stronger than I'll ever be." We looked at each other in the dark, mother and daughter. Two opposite destinies. "Go," she finally said. "Go and don't look back." Take care of that boy. Give him the life you deserve. I approached, kissed her face. Wrinkled skin, smell of lye soap, taste of tears. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, my daughter. I went out the door without looking back. The dawn air was cold, cutting. Charles nestled against my chest, going back to sleep. I walked quickly through the deserted streets. Each step took me further from that house, that life, that nightmare. The bus station was small, poorly lit. Rosie was already there, faithful to the end. I thought you weren't coming anymore. I almost didn't. My mother. She knows? She always knew. Rosie nodded. Between women, some things don't need to be said. The bus arrived puffing, releasing black smoke. The driver, a pot-bellied old man, took my ticket without looking. Washington, huh? Long trip. 18 hours if we don't break down on the way. 18 hours. Almost a whole day moving away from hell, approaching who knows what. But anything was better than staying. I climbed the steps with difficulty, balancing Charles and the bag. The bus was almost empty, half a dozen passengers sleeping, heads bobbing to the rhythm of the road. I chose a seat in the back, near the window. I settled Charles, who was now awake, looking at everything with baby curiosity. Rosie came up to say goodbye. Take care of him. And yourself. I will. When you get there, forget this place. Forget everything. Start from scratch. Like it's that easy. She held my hand. It's not easy, but it's necessary. You deserve to be happy, Jessica. Both of you do. The driver honked. Let's go. I've got a schedule to keep. Rosie ran down. She waved from the sidewalk as the bus started. I waved back, eyes burning with unshed tears. The bus picked up speed, leaving behind the familiar little houses, the church where I suffered in silence, the cemetery where my father was rotting, the square where I never played, Oak Ridge disappearing in the dark, becoming memory, becoming past. Charles pointed to the window, amazed at the lights passing by quickly. Look, Mama, look. Yes, my son, we're leaving, far, far away. He clapped his hands, happy with the adventure. So small, so innocent. He had no idea of the hell we were leaving behind, of the monster who slept in that house and who would wake up in a few hours to discover that his prey had escaped. I imagined Tony's face when he saw the empty room, the anger, the hatred, but also the relief. Now he wouldn't have to share the inheritance or support his sister's bastard. Yes, he would be furious at first, but then he would find another victim. Men like him always do. The town was full of defenseless girls, of passive fathers, of weak mothers. But I was no longer one of them. The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the fields. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky pink and orange. Charles slept in my lap, soft breathing, little hand clutching my blouse. 18 hours. 18 hours to leave Jessica Randall behind and be born another person. Someone without a past, without trauma, without fear. Someone who could start over. I rested my head against the window, watching the landscape change. Sparse fields, poor little towns, isolated gas stations. The deep South passing before my eyes, so big, so full of possibilities. In Washington, nobody knew me. Nobody knew my story. I could make up anything. War widow, country girl trying her luck, ordinary single mother. Anything but the truth. The truth would remain buried in Oak Ridge, along with my father, along with my innocence, along with the girl I was, and would never be again. Charles moved, mumbled. I gave him the breast. I still breastfed, more for comfort than for hunger. He sucked eagerly, green eyes looking at me with absolute trust. Green like his father's, but that didn't matter anymore. They were just eyes, beautiful eyes of my beautiful son, who would grow up free, happy, never knowing where he came from. The bus swayed, the engine rumbled, the hours passed. Quick stops in little towns whose names I didn't even know. People getting on and off, lives crossing for moments. At one of the stops, I got off to use the bathroom. Woman alone with baby always draws attention. An older lady offered to hold Charles while I went. Thank you, but I'll take him with me. Never. Never again would I leave him alone with strangers. Simple food, but with the taste of freedom. The afternoon fell. The night came. Charles slept most of the journey, waking only to nurse or when the bus shook too much. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Each mile was a victory, each town passed a relief. Finally, it was almost midnight when the driver announced, "Next stop, Washington, D.C. bus station. Those getting off, get your stuff ready." Washington. We had arrived. I looked out the window and saw the lights of the city. Large blocks of concrete illuminated, wide streets, a completely different world from what I knew. I took a deep breath. The new life began now. Without looking back, as Rosie said. Without fear, as my mother never managed. Just Charles and me, against the world. The bus stopped. I got off with wobbly legs, body aching from the journey. Charles woke up with the movement, looked around startled by so much light, so much noise. "It's okay, my love. We've arrived." The bus station was enormous compared to Oak Ridge's. People everywhere, buses coming and going, vendors shouting. I felt lost, small, but also invisible. Perfect. It was exactly what I needed, to disappear into the crowd. I looked for a public phone, dialed the number Mrs. Wilson had given me. A female voice answered, "Good Hope Boarding House." "Hello, is Mrs. Martha?" Mrs. Wilson sent me. Jessica Randall." "Oh, yes, I was expecting you. Come, dear. Take a taxi. Give the driver this address." A taxi. I had never taken a taxi in my life, but I learned quickly. Big cities teach you the hard way. The driver, a friendly middle-aged man, helped with the luggage. "First time in Washington?" "Yes. You'll like it. New city, full of opportunity." Opportunity. It was all I needed. The boarding house was in a residential area, a simple but clean building. Mrs. Martha was waiting at the door, a woman of about 50, gray hair tied back, checkered apron. "You must be tired. Come, I've prepared a room." The room was small but had the essentials: a single bed, an improvised crib for Charles, a dresser, a mirror. Luxury compared to what I knew. "The kitchen is on the ground floor. You start tomorrow, okay?" "I can. Of course I can." "Great. There are 3 meals a day for the guests. Breakfast at 6, lunch at noon, dinner at 7. Payment is weekly, plus room and board." I nodded to everything. I would work whatever was necessary. That first night in Washington, lying in the strange bed, with Charles sleeping peacefully in the crib beside me, I finally allowed myself to cry. Cry with relief, with fear, with hope, for everything I had lived and everything I was yet to live. Outside, the city slept. Planned city, modern, full of promises. Where nobody knew me, where my past didn't exist, where I could be anyone. I chose to be Jessica Smith. Common name, without history. Young widow, husband died in a work accident. One among thousands of migrants who arrived every day in the capital in search of a better life. And it was true, in a way. I was migrating. I was seeking a better life. Just not for a dead husband. The past stayed in Oak Ridge. The future began there, in that cramped little room, in that strange city, with my son in my arms and freedom within reach. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be ours, and that was enough. Washington was my salvation and my challenge. The first months at Mrs. Martha's boarding house were hard, but in a different way. It wasn't the terror from before. It was the hardness of honest work, of the heavy routine, but one that was free. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning, leave Charles sleeping. Mrs. Martha took care of him while I worked, and go to the kitchen. Breakfast for 15 guests was no joke. Toast, fried eggs, freshly brewed coffee. Then I'd clean everything, prepare lunch, beans, rice, meat, clean again, prepare dinner. In between, I'd run to nurse Charles, change diapers, give him attention. But you know what? It was good. It was exhausting. It was sweaty. But it was mine. Nobody touched me without permission. Nobody invaded my room. Nobody called me a whore. I was just Jessica, the cook, the quiet but hard-working young woman. Charles grew strong. At 1.5 years, he was already running around the boarding house, playing with the guests. He was the joy of the place. Mrs. Martha melted for him. The chambermaids fought to play with him. For the first time, my son had a family. Odd, improvised, but a family. 1967 flew by. I saved every penny. The dream was to leave the boarding house, rent a little place just for us. However tiny, but ours, where I could raise Charles my way, away from curious looks, from uncomfortable questions. It was in 1968 that my life took another turn. A new guest appeared at the boarding house. Mr. Robert, a retired civil servant, recent widower, a man of about 60, educated, quiet. He'd stay there for weeks, then disappear, then come back. He noticed Charles. It was hard not to notice. A 2-year-old boy, smart, talkative, green eyes that drew attention. He started bringing little presents, a toy car here, a little book there. I thanked him, but kept my distance. Men who seemed too kind always made me wary. But Mr. Robert was different. He didn't try anything. He just talked, told stories, played with Charles. Gradually, I lowered my guard. He told me about his wife who died of cancer, about his children who lived far away, about the loneliness that weighed on him. "You remind me of my daughter," he said one day. "The same strength, the same determination." One afternoon, Charles fell while playing and scraped his knee. He cried so much that nothing consoled him. Mr. Robert appeared with a first aid kit. "I was an army medic," he explained, cleaning the wound. "I know how to take care of this." While he took care of Charles, talking to distract him, singing a silly little song, something changed in me. I saw there not a dangerous man, but a grandfather, someone who also needed family. The friendship grew slowly. He'd come to the kitchen, help peel potatoes while we talked. He talked about the times of Kennedy, the civil rights movement, the hopes for a new country. I listened, learned, dreamed. One day, he made the proposal. "Jessica, I have a house in Georgetown. It's been empty since my wife died. Too big for me alone. How about you and Charles living there? It's not a favor. You take care of the house, cook, and I pay a fair salary." My heart raced. A house? Leave the boarding house? It seemed too good to be true. But what will people say? He laughed. "Let them say what they want. I'm too old to care about gossip. You need a house, I need company. It's business, not romance." I thought long and hard. I talked with Mrs. Martha, who approved right away. "Robert is a decent man, Jessica. I've never seen him disrespect anyone." I accepted. In March 1969, we moved to his house. It was a simple but spacious townhouse. 3 bedrooms, yard, all neat. Charles got a room of his own for the first time in his life. The routine was peaceful. I took care of the house, prepared the meals. Mr. Robert left early, returned in the late afternoon. We'd talk at dinner, then each to their own corner. Mutual respect, healthy distance. But children don't know these boundaries. Charles adopted Mr. Robert as his grandfather. Grandpa Rob, he called him. He followed the old man around the house, asked for stories, showed him drawings, and Mr. Robert, bless him, melted completely. It was he who taught Charles to ride a bicycle, who took him to the park for the first time, who explained about the planes that passed. "Look there, Charlie. That big one is a Boeing." Seeing the two together, my heart squeezed. This is what family should be. Affection without malice, care without ulterior motives. Everything that was missing in my childhood, my son was having. 1970 brought changes. Mr. Robert fell ill, heart problem. I started taking care of him more closely. Medicine at the right time, special diet, forced rest. He complained but obeyed. "You're worse than a sergeant," he joked. "It's for your own good." I know. That's why I put up with it. On an afternoon at the hospital, after a bigger scare, he held my hand. "Jessica, I need to ask you something. If something happens to me, don't talk like that. Listen, If it happens, I want you to keep the house. You and Charles. I've already arranged the papers. I protested. It was too much I couldn't accept. But he insisted. I don't have anyone, Jessica. The children barely call. You and Charles are my family now. Let me take care of you like you take care of me. I cried. For the first time in years, I cried with gratitude. Not for the money or the house, but for the gesture. Someone seeing me as a person, not as a thing. Someone wanting to protect me, not use me. Mr. Robert got better, but became more fragile. I started sleeping in the next room, to hear if he needed anything. Charles slept between us two. In my room when he was afraid. In his, when he wanted a story. My miracle. Mom, why don't I have a dad? He asked one day, out of nowhere. I froze. I knew the question would come, but I wasn't prepared. Your dad died, son, when you were a baby. How did he die? Accident. Working. Was he nice? I took a deep breath. He was. Yes, he was. A lie. But some lies are necessary. Some truths kill. Charles accepted the explanation. For now. But I knew, one day I would have to tell more. Make up details, create memories. Anything but the truth. 1972 came with the presidential election. The whole country stopped to watch. Mr. Robert bought a new TV, color. Total luxury. We watched all the coverage together. Me, him, Charles, some neighbors. When Nixon won re-election, Charles painted his face red, white, and blue, ran down the street with the other children. Normal, happy, free. Watching him there, celebrating with his little friends, I thought of Oak Ridge. Did it still exist? Was Tony still living there? Was my mother alive? I blocked the thoughts. That life had died. I was another person now. Jessica Smith, cook, single mother, Washington resident. The past didn't exist. But sometimes, in the sleepless dawns, it came back. In nightmares where Tony found me, where he took Charles from me, where everything started again. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, run to Charles's room, check if he was there, safe, sleeping peacefully. In 1973, Charles turned 7. Mr. Robert organized a party. Cake, balloons, kids from the whole street. I took photos with the camera he had given me as a gift. Frozen moments of unlikely happiness. That year, something changed between me and Mr. Robert. It wasn't romance. Neither I wanted it, nor did he try. It was something deeper. Complicity. Real family. Built day by day, in mutual care, in affection without demands. He got worse in the winter. Hospitalization after hospitalization. I divided myself between hospital and home, between caring for him and for Charles. Neighbors helped, teachers understood. A support network I never had before. One night at the hospital, he was too weak to speak loudly, whispered, "Jessica, you were the daughter I always wanted to have. Charles, the grandson I never met. Thank you, I replied, holding his hand. For everything. He died in September. Peaceful, sleeping, as he deserved. The funeral was simple. His children showed up, 2 men in suits, with unfriendly faces. They questioned everything, who I was, what I was doing there, why their father left the house to me. I'm his housekeeper, I explained. A housekeeper who lives in the house? Who inherits everything? The insinuation was clear. They thought I was a lover, a gold digger, a con artist. I let them talk. I didn't owe explanations to anyone. The lawyer resolved everything. The papers were in order, Mr. Roberts' wishes registered. The house was legally mine and Charles's. The sons left grumbling, promising to contest. They never appeared again. 1974 began differently. For the first time in my life, I had something of my own. A house, stability, a future. Charles was growing healthy, studious. I found a job at a diner nearby. I needed to work, earn our living. But the nights were difficult. Without Mr. Robert, the house seemed too big, too empty. Charles missed his surrogate grandfather. I missed the company. That's when I met Mrs. Neely, the neighbor next door. Tough New Orleans lady, respected voodoo priestess. She saw my distress, offered help. Girl, you're carrying something heavy. I can see it in your eyes. Want to talk? I refused at first. Then, on a night of insomnia, I knocked on her door. We drank coffee, talked. I didn't tell everything. I never told everything. But I talked about the loneliness, the fear, the nightmares. She listened, nodded, understood. Everyone has ghosts, child. The secret is not letting them control us. We became friends. She looked after Charles when I worked late. I helped at her spiritual gatherings. Community, belonging, things I never had in Oak Ridge. Charles loved the stories she told. Saints, legends, myths. He learned about culture, religion, respect for differences. He grew open-minded, big-hearted. This boy will go far, Mrs. Neely prophesied. He has his own light. I hoped it was true. For him to go far indeed. Far from any shadow of the past, from any mark of the violence that created him. In 1975, Charles turned 9. Preteen questioner, curious about everything. The questions about his father returned, more elaborate. What kind of work did he do? Construction. He helped build Washington. Why aren't there any photos of him? We lost everything in a move. How did you two meet? Each question, a new lie. Each lie, another brick in the wall that protected him from the truth. I started writing. At night, after Charles was asleep, I put on paper the memories. Not to publish, God forbid, but to organize. To make sure I would never forget, even wanting to. Oak Ridge, Tony, the basement, the escape, all there in crooked letters, notebook hidden in the back of the drawer. One day I thought, when I die, someone will find it, will read it, will understand. But not Charles. Never Charles. 1976 brought adolescence for real. Voice changing, pimples on the face, interest in girls, normal, healthy, everything adolescence should be. But the eyes, those damn green eyes. Each year that passed, more like Tony's. Sometimes, at a specific angle, in a particular expression, I saw the monster in my angel. I'd take a deep breath. Remember, genetics is not destiny. Nurture overcomes nature. My son was good, would be good, regardless of the blood in his veins. In 1977, the graduation from middle school. Charles in a suit, diploma in hand, proud smile. Me in the audience crying secretly. My boy becoming a man, a good man. The years went by, and I watched each moment as if it were the last. By 1978, my Charles was preparing for college entrance exams. Mom, I want to go to college, engineering like Dad. Dad, the invented ghost he idolized, the dead hero who never existed. You will, son. You'll achieve all your dreams, his dreams, mine, those of the imaginary father I created to protect him. In 1978, those were nights of study, textbooks spread across the table, nervousness in the air, Charles tense. Me even more so. When the result came out, accepted at Georgetown University, civil engineering, it was an explosion of joy. Party in the street. Mrs. Neely made her special jambalaya. Neighbors brought drinks, music until late. Charles hugging me, laughing, celebrating. I made it, Mom. I made it. We made it, I thought. Against all odds, against everyone, we made it. College was expensive. Nobody warned about that. Books, materials, transportation. I went back to working 2 jobs, diner during the day, cleaning at night. Exhausting, but necessary for his future. 1979 brought news. Charles in his sophomore year, steady dating a girl from his class, doing an internship, becoming the man his father never was. Honest, hardworking, caring. One day he came home with his girlfriend. Claudia, classmate. Decent girl, studious, pretty. Traditional Washington family. Mom, this is the woman of my life. I smiled. He was 19 and already knew. Young love, but true love. 1980 was the year of graduation. My son, the engineer. Tears of pride, exploding chest. Him on stage, receiving the diploma, looking for my face in the crowd. Graduation party. Claudia's family present. Doctor father, teacher mother, lawyer siblings. Fine people, educated, treating me well despite everything, Claudia's mother said. He was born good, I replied. Lie, truth. Both things. Born of violence, but chose love. A miracle I cultivated with blood, sweat, and silence. 1981 arrived with a wedding. Full church, veil and wreath, wedding march. Charles in a suit, Claudia in white, me as maid of honor. The groom's only family. Where are your relatives, Mrs. Smith? They asked. I don't have any, all dead. Another half-truth. Dead to me, at least. The priest talked about union, family, Christian love. I thought of Oak Ridge, of the forced marriage, of the terror disguised as sacrament. I compared it with this. Two young people choosing each other, loving each other, respecting each other. The difference between hell and heaven. 1982 was blessed. First grandchild. Girl, Mary Claire. Beautiful, healthy, crier. Charles silly with fatherhood, Claudia radiant, me a grandmother at 51. I held that little creature in my arms, perfect, innocent. Real granddaughter. Real family. No secrets, no shadows, no fear. Grandma, she looks just like you, someone commented. I looked closely. Dark hair, upturned nose. Nothing of green eyes, thank God. Nothing that reminded me of him. 1984 brought the second grandchild, John Robert. Homage to Mr. Robert. Smiling boy, calm. Charles building his own house, stable life, happy family. Everything I dreamed of, more than I deserved. Sometimes at family gatherings, I'd look around. Full table, people laughing, children playing. Normal, everyday, blessed life. Nobody imagined. Nobody would ever imagine. And that's how it had to be. In 1985, Charles took the big step. Started his own firm. Small, but promising. Government contracts, important works, respected name in the market. Mom, I want you to stop working. Let me take care of you now. I resisted at first. Independence was my security. But he insisted. Claudia supported. After all, I deserved to rest. I retired from cleaning. Life as a full-time grandma. Picking up grandchildren from school, making carrot cake, telling bedtime stories. Made-up stories, of course. Fairies, princes, happy endings. No real monsters, dark basements, desperate escapes. 1986 marked our move to a bigger house. Garden, pool, room for each child. Charles insisting that I live with them. You're the head of the family, Mom. Your place is with us. My place. After so much no place, I finally had one. But the past, the past doesn't rest. On an insomnia night that same year, I turned on the TV, the news, stories from all over the country, and suddenly, a report. Town of Oak Ridge modernizes infrastructure. Oak Ridge. It still existed. Aerial images, interviews, progress. I looked for familiar faces, found none. 20 years change a lot of things. Was he still living there? Had he married, had children? Had he done to others what he did to me? I turned off the TV. Some portals should not be opened. Here we are. Me, at 73. Time flies when you're busy living instead of just surviving. Charles a grandfather too. Gray hair but same sweet smile. Mary Claire a doctor like the surrogate grandfather she never met. John Robert followed his father's footsteps in engineering. Alice a teenager, dreaming of being a writer. Great-grandma, have you ever thought about writing your memoirs? She asked the other day. I almost choked on my coffee. What memoirs, my angel? Grandma's life doesn't have much adventure. Lie number 1001. But some stories are not to be told. They are to be buried, forgotten, erased, so that the next generations can write their own, clean, without the stains of the past. These days I dreamed of Oak Ridge. First time in years, but it wasn't a nightmare. I dreamed of the town catching fire, turning to ashes, the wind carrying everything away. I woke up feeling light. Now, recording this video for the Grandparents' Tales channel, I tell this story for the first time. Why now? Maybe because time is running out. Maybe because other women need to hear it. Maybe because keeping secrets is tiring and I'm too old to carry this weight alone. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I know it was heavy, I know it hurts, but it needed to be said. There are many Jessicas out there, trapped in their own basements, thinking there's no way out. There is a way out. There's always a way. Sometimes it's a door, sometimes it's a window, sometimes it's a hole in the wall that you have to dig yourself, but there's a way out. The miracle wasn't the money for the ticket, or the job offer, or even my father's death. The miracle was that I believed I deserved better. It was having the courage to seize the chance when it appeared. Charles doesn't know this story. He will never know. Some would say it's wrong, that a son has the right to know where he came from. I say, a son has the right to be happy, to live without the weight of crimes he didn't commit, to believe his father was a hero, not a monster. I protected him his whole life from this truth. It's my last act of love, taking this secret to the grave, letting him continue to believe in the beautiful lie I built. Engineer father, died in an accident, mother's young love. Today I'm even grateful for his green eyes. They taught me that appearance doesn't define character, that evil isn't inherited, it's learned, and that a mother's love can transform any cursed inheritance into a blessing. If you watched this far, do this grandma a favor. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, show that my story wasn't told in vain. And more, tell me in the comments where you're from. I want to know if this story is reaching women from all over the country.